welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I will be sharing my game that I played in the Dutch League just now, a day ago. So first things first, I just got back home from Reykjavik Open. I arrived back home on Friday, and the next day on Saturday, I had my game in Dutch League, which is pretty crazy, right? So I was, pretty exhausted from, of course, the tournament and traveling and everything. But I was very ready to play another game because I just lost 11 rating points. I would like to get them back. And going to the game, I felt pretty warmed up, and it actually felt so nice to just have played a tournament and be ready for my next game. So yeah, that was really nice. So the way that the Dutch League works, it's actually a little bit different than usual. So the Dutch League is basically a tournament that has games spread over the whole season. So it is 9 rounds across the whole season, starting from September up until, let's say, April. And you play a team versus team. It's a team competition. And the way that it works is that you know who you're playing beforehand in terms of teams, but you don't know your actual opponent. You submit a lineup to the arbiter when you arrive as a team, and you know which color you're playing. But that's it. There are players known beforehand, as in you see a list of players that have played in the team already, but not much more you know than this. So there's very little preparation that can be done, which is actually really nice, and it gives a lot of surprises, and that makes it a lot of fun. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into the game. So let me pull up the game. In this game, I face Paul Hummel, who is actually used to stream as Chess Guy, and I believe he doesn't stream anymore, but he does have a YouTube channel, so make sure to check it out. I will link it down below in the description. I believe he had some really good educational content, so if you want to check it out, make sure to do so. But yeah, I was really excited to face him. He is rated 2162, so more or less around my rating, and I was starting with the white pieces. And the game started as I always do with e4, almost always. Have to do it. c6. My opponent plays a Caro-Kann, and we know from Reykjavik Open what I do against it. Indeed, the fantasy variation. I was so excited to play it again. Of course, I did not prepare it for this very game, but I thought, well, with the knowledge that I gained from playing 2 games in this opening, I thought, let's just have fun with it and see where things go to, end up in. So my opponent played the move e6, which is actually really interesting because I remember this one game I had in Reykjavik Open where I was struggling to develop my pieces. I knew which moves I was supposed to play for the next 2 moves. After that, I was sort of out of book and not sure what to do. So, of course, lesson learned, you would say. So, yeah, I played knight c3. By the way, my opponent said afterwards in the analysis that he tends to play d takes e4, but he didn't really like those positions, or he had bad results or something. So that's why, he assumed I knew all of this. And, well, I do know it, but of course I didn't fully prepare for this game. I was super tired after my travel and everything, so I just went with the flow, and I also faced this line in the tournament, right? So I knew more or less what to do. So I was not afraid to face this. So e6. e6 is quite a solid option, and it kind of transposes to French defense type of structures. I play knight c3, bishop b4 is a good move, and here bishop f4. I remember preparing this, and I had the exact same thought during my game as what I had while preparing for this one game that I had. So the thing is that I don't really know what my bishop is doing there, but I'm supposed to play this, and I didn't really have time to fully understand this opening, and I didn't really think that I was going to see it anytime soon again, honestly. So when my opponent played this, I was a bit surprised, but it's fine, what to do. So then knight e7 was played, which was the exact same move that was played in my game as well in Reykjavik. And here I went for something new, queen d3. And I remember when analyzing with my opponent and also analyzing the game afterwards that I'm supposed to move this queen to d3 and then e3, this very common maneuver or something. and then I can go long castle, knight evolves to e2, this bishop unclear where it goes to, but yeah, and then you just start pushing on the king side with h4. So that was the idea. My opponent plays b6 and here queen e3 because I don't want to allow bishop a6, just for the sake of it to attack my queen. I could have castled here as well, but a little risky right now. Of course, bishop a6 isn't coming as well, but knight e2 is also a good move here, which was really surprising to me because when I played in the other game, knight e2 was a mistake. So that is really interesting. Anyway, my opponent went for knight g6, bishop g3, simply back, short castle, and h4. And I was really excited to start attacking. And I remember very well from the other game that the computer was constantly begging me to play h4. Even if I'm losing a pawn, even if anything, I need to play h4. And in this situation, I'm not particularly losing the pawn. My opponent could have played the move h5 to stop my pawn, but I was really happy to face this if this was on the board because this pawn on h5 is super weak and I'm not too scared of bishop e7 trying to grab my pawn because what I always have in mind is taking on b8 and play g3, if anything. And my pawn will be defended and I wanted to grind slowly to try to attack the pawn on h5 over here. So I also have queen f2 of course in mind, so there's many ways to defend my pawn on h4. Instead, my pawn went for the very strong move c5. The idea is that it's very logical actually. You get attacked on one of the sides of the board, you strike in the center, and that's exactly what my opponent is doing. So that was a really strong move by my opponent, and I actually started to wonder, wait, maybe I am in slight trouble already? Because if I simply, carelessly castle here, I might already be facing some trouble here. The idea is that after c takes d4, queen takes d4, there's suddenly knight c6, the pawn is moving to d4, and my pieces are quite awkward, and my attack is going to, not really fall apart, but it's going to take some time until I can actually make improvements here. So I really was not happy to see this. Instead, I went for bishop takes b8. I took that knight off the board, and I thought I don't want to face any of the knight developing move there to c6, right? So bishop takes b8, h5, and knight e7. So we're simply continue like this. h6, I really thought I have to include this move over here because I'm preparing several threats. Let me talk you through them. So let's say my opponent carelessly takes on d4 because, he really wants to take that pawn. Queen takes d4, and you have this idea to play knight c6 again. Well, the problem is queen takes g7 is a checkmate. So that means that after taking on d4, I essentially have a double attack on the bishop and the pawn. Of course, my opponent can decide to take on c3, I can take back, and d4 is possible, but I really like my chances here. This pawn is a little awkward here, and I can always come back to attack here with the queen to g5, and it just looks really awkward overall, black's position. And slowly but surely, I'll be able to develop at some point. So that is not an ideal situation. Then what's next? So yeah, you can't really take on d4, so you have to figure out what to do with that pawn. So my opponent plays the move g6, which is a very strong move. Well, you have to do this, otherwise problems arise, right? And you don't want me to open up the h-file that easily. So I play long castle, and my opponent goes for knight c6. And yeah, my center it's nice, but also very vulnerable. Preferably, I want to have a pawn on c3, but my knight is in the way, and I'm simply a little bit out of time to put my pieces in the right squares. I took on d5 eventually because, so before this, I was actually really hoping to play queen f4. So let me just move over here back to this position. I wanted to play queen f4. And the idea is that I attack the rook, but I'm also threatening to go to f6 and threaten checkmate. And I was so excited to play this. But after some thought, I decided to take, well, my opponent could take on d4, and I decided that this is maybe not a good idea for me. I might be able to take the rook here, but my king, my whole king side is just so bad. And so I was thinking of this intermediate move, bishop d6, queen takes a7. This queen is quite awkward and just not participating in the game. My opponent can take here. There's bishop g3 check, could have been played beforehand so that the king is going to an awkward place, and my opponent will be down the exchange, but all the pieces are going to attack my king, and my pieces are very sad. So I really thought that, yeah, this is bad news. I can't afford to play queen f4. I was really upset that this is not working, but I had to accept it, and that's why instead I went for long castle. So knight c6, I took pawn takes, I took on c5 again because I thought I have to clean up the center a little bit and make use of this weakness over here. And here my opponent took on c5 with the bishop. So the idea is simple. My opponent apparently had to play the move d4 here. And the thing is that it's a very difficult move to play, and it's not so clear as it may appear, right? Because I can simply move my queen. My opponent cannot take on c3 because that pawn is pinned along the d file. And what else can my opponent do here? Not so easy to see. So as it turns out, you can take pawn takes and then pawn takes. And yeah, with this awkward king situation over here, the double pawns on the c file, my opponent can sooner or later play queen a5. Has to be really careful still, but with a few accurate moves, my opponent can attack my king, and yeah, it's looking quite awkward on the queen side, right? So this would have been a really strong way to deal with the position for my opponent, but not an easy move to find. I mean, like the move is easy to find, but the follow-up is like, is this winning enough? My queen can be really annoying. It's not that easy to understand. And admittedly, I did overlook this quite a bit. I just thought bishop takes c5 is the best move, I thought. But after that, I was able to play queen f4, bishop e6, and here, from this moment onwards, I started to come back slowly. Bishop e5, I'm attacking the knight on c6, bishop d6, intermediate move, I have to retreat, and here knight e7. And here, I really want to play queen d4, but then knight f5 is a little bit annoying, attacking my queen on d4 and also protecting that g7 square. So I really felt the need to play g4 to stop the knight from going to f5, I mean. Bishop e5 was played, and after that, I just developed my knight because, yeah, my knight is still not developed on move 20. Quite a disaster. But yeah, I was not happy to see this bishop on this long diagonal protecting and at the same time, you know, attacking something. It's a really strong bishop. But at the same time, I thought my knight can head to d4, and then maybe this bishop is actually not worth so much. So yeah, I thought that in this position, I started to have things a little bit under control. So it was looking good for me. My opponent goes bishop h8, which is maybe not the most ideal move because it's a bit too far away from the action. I thought that bishop f6 at least was going to be played, or first maybe rook c8 over here and queen c7, I guess. But yeah, the thing is that bishop f6 and you try to provoke g5. And the thing is that if I play this, then f5 becomes clear again for the knight or the bishop, etc. So yeah, bishop h8 makes sense in a way, but I was not too worried about this move. Rook he1, rook c8, and my knight goes to d4. I did consider the move knight f4 because I want to attack d5 and also the bishop on e6, but I was really scared of those typical sacrifices that we see in Sicilian openings where black is sacrificing the exchange. In return, the pawn structure of white is very weakened, the king over there is very vulnerable, and soon queen c7, bishop takes c3, and yeah, white has to fight to equalize, well, not equalize, to not lose basically, because this is very tricky. White is still better, but it's not that clear. So I didn't want to take any risks. That's why I went for knight d4 instead. Bishop d7, bishop a6. I want to keep the bishops on the board because I like my bishop more. It is the annoying piece in this position, I feel like, because this rook has to go somewhere, but where does it go? Rook c5 is what my opponent played, and I played b4. And now you would say that the rook has to retreat, right? Like it has only one square available. It's forced. But as it turns out, knight c6 is actually a really insane, crazy move that works. So it was really funny because in analysis, my opponent told me that, yeah, I guess like we both saw knight c6, and I was like, I did not really consider this move because I was really focused on my own plans, and I was looking for ways to improve my position and start to like attack and everything. So these kind of counter-attacking moves did not really cross my mind. And I also thought like, okay, like I'm just taking the exchange, you know, like I'm winning material. It should be completely fine. But the computer more or less likes black's position here, so it's not so clear. It just looks from a human point of view, it looks very strange. So I fully understand why my opponent didn't go for this in the end. But yeah, I completely missed this move. And the reason why was basically because I was calculating rook c7 and I was very stuck on the idea, do I take on e7 or not? And I also thought about this a while ago, a few moves earlier, but it was a bit too crazy and a bit too much. And I thought this was the perfect moment to take on e7. And apparently it's not really the greatest move here. Apparently I just had to take it easy with a3 and just improve my position slowly. But yeah, I was very impatient and time was running, low at some point. We're on move 25 right now, so I had to start making a bit more progress in terms of my time situation. So I took on e7, my opponent took, and knight takes c5, and I'm attacking the queen and the rook. So basically I'm winning a pawn after this. So queen d6, take, and this is not a position. So you would say that I thought I was completely winning here already. I'm up a pawn. This bishop is not participating. This bishop is dominated by my knight. What can go wrong? Well, I played c3 with the idea that I want to put my king on b2, get out of this pin, and at the same time defend my knight on d4 and kind of like build some sort of fortress against the pieces so that there's no entry points whatsoever. Turns out that my opponent could play bishop e5 here and causing some annoying situations because bishop f4 is a big threat. I'll be losing my queen, of course, but also this pawn on h6. And once I lose that pawn on h6, it's not so clear anymore. But fortunately for me, my opponent did not see this and he played bishop a4. And I just left with my rook to e1, rook d8, king b2, and I'm here running away, of course, bishop e5. So my opponent played this move a little bit too late because now that my king is away from the diagonal, it is, doing less impact on me. So king a3, I'm just running away the king. I thought I have to go somewhere safe. I don't trust any of the bishop takes d4 type of moves. I don't know, it looked really terrifying to me. So I just want to attack that bishop and start improving my position. I also have to keep in mind that there's moves such as b5 possible, allowing my opponent to trap my bishop and maybe capture the bishop. So if you get rid of the knight on d4, then suddenly b5 becomes a move. So my opponent goes bishop e8, and from here onwards, it was going completely wrong for my opponent. Queen e3, my opponent played f6, and here my opponent allowed a fork. Well, I remember I was like super on the clock here, like 30 seconds, 40 seconds, and I was thinking of the move f4. I really wanted to play it, but I wasn't entirely sure, and then it suddenly hit me. I can fork my opponent. But what is really interesting is that this is not the best move. It's not good at all. I'm actually losing the advantage because my opponent can take on c3. After takes, bishop takes, my rook is under attack, and basically if I take my opponent's rook, bishop takes e1, and it's a draw. Well, maybe even worse for me because my opponent has a pair of bishops, and I don't really look like I'm gonna have a good time in this position. So instead of trading like this, I can attack the bishop and hope for, some situation where I attack both pieces and then I can take one of them. But my opponent plays bishop d2, and I can start attacking again with rook c2, but my opponent simply moves the rook, let's say rook d6, and yeah, all the pieces are defended, my knight has to leave, and that's it basically. I am going to lose h6, and yeah, this would not have been such a pleasant position for me. So fortunately for me, my opponent went for queen c6, which is also the move that I was thinking about. Like my opponent was making moves that I was seeing, so that was really interesting to see that my opponent is, making those moves that I'm actually also considering. So here I can just take queen a4 check, king b2, queen takes b4, king c2. A little funny note here, fun fact, is that, so I saw this line already, I was calculating it, of course, and I was thinking about king c1, because I thought, okay, like king a1, I'm simply going to lose. Let me show you, bishop takes c3, and that's it. So king c1, I thought, okay, like this is completely fine. I was seeing bishop f4, but okay, like this is completely fine because I just take the queen and it's over. But as I was super long the clock here, you suddenly start to see ghosts. So like I kind of forgot this thought process in my head because I ignored king c2 because of bishop a4, and I was like, oh, that looks very scary. I don't like that. But then it suddenly hit me like, oh, but if I play king c1, bishop f4, I'm losing my queen. Like in the last seconds, I was like, oh no, I have to play something else. So then I went for king c2 because I was like, okay, like bishop a4 check, king d3, my king's running away. Okay, this is fine. But turns out that I could have just played king c1. So that was a little bit stressful. But after bishop a4, actually my opponent went for queen a4. But just to illustrate, after bishop a4, I could simply run away with king d3. Let's say queen takes, king e2, and my king is running away. There are no more checks left at some point, and I will be up material, and it will be an easy win. But my opponent went for the move queen a4 check instead, and I go back to b1 now because no more checks left. My opponent took on a6, I attacked the bishop, and my opponent is simply losing one of the bishops over here. So my opponent still played a couple of moves, but after bishop f7, queen d4, this was the moment that my opponent resigned, and I won the game. So this is my second win in this league, which is pretty crazy. Really happy with this game. It was a little shaky, but I was just really happy to win for the second time this season. In 8 rounds, I won twice. And just to give you some context, I won one game where I was completely lost and I had no business winning that game whatsoever. But a crazy swindle happened. My opponent completely collapsed. I will spare you the details, but I managed to win that game. All the other games I have drawn. I have 6 draws in the Dutch league so far this season. Insane. And most of those games, almost every one of them, like I think like at least 4 of them, I was completely winning. And then, okay, my opponent maybe also had some chances somewhere, but I was from the beginning winning, and then I blew it in time trouble, and then at the end, we both made mistakes, and it was a draw. So, I've been really struggling to find ways to win in this season, even though I had really good positions, and it was quite frustrating to have only one win, where I was completely lost. Like, I had zero business winning that game. From start to finish, it was dead lost. So that's why winning this game feels really nice, but there's another reason why winning this game is really nice. Now, the thing is that the Dutch League is an opportunity for me to gain a WGM norm. It is possible to achieve this, but you need to play against at least 5 title players. And guess what? Yours truly has played against 5 title players. But those draws that I've made were quite hurtful to my performance because some of my opponents were 2100. And in order to achieve WGM norm, I need to reach 2400 performance rating. That's quite high. It helps to not lose your games because then you kind of maintain that same kind of performance rating, which was around 2350 before this game. But now my performance rating is 2380. So I'm this close to actually achieve my first WGM norm. Now, a number of things are here happening. We know that the pairings in the Dutch League are very random and everything, but here is a catch. So in the last game in the Dutch League, I have to win against someone rated 2206 or something, some small number, like 2206, I don't know, something like this. So I need to beat someone of that rating at least to be able to achieve this performance rating of 2400. And I have never been this close to achieving this. Never. I've never been this close, which is why I really wanted to record this video to share with you that I have a huge opportunity in the last round of the Dutch League to achieve my first WGM norm. I do have to admit the chances are not very high. They're not in my favor because I need to find an opponent that has that rating and that I actually then beat them. So the first task is to find an opponent of that rating at least, and then the second task is to beat them. So it's quite a tough challenge. I'm not so sure what will be possible, of course, but the fact that this is the closest I've ever gotten, it means a lot already. And I just wanted to share this with you that, you know, there's like a game to look forward to, and I really hope to do well in that game. But yeah, for now, I just wanted to share that I'm this close to my first norm. But if it doesn't happen, I wouldn't feel like too upset or something, because a lot of it is out of my control, right? I have to beat quite a strong player and also like play actually a strong player. So that's why I'm just going into this like with very neutral feelings, and I'll just try my best and just enjoy the game, and we'll see what happens. But the last round of the Dutch League is happening on 20th of April. So it's still quite some time ahead of us. I'll be playing 2 tournaments in the meantime. So there's a lot more games to look forward to, but for now, I just wanted to share this. So yeah, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for the support. It means a lot to me. It really helps a lot to keep going. Your guys' support is really amazing, and thank you so much. I have not a lot more words to add. I just want to say that yeah, I will try to share more and more behind the scenes stuff. I will be very busy with my tournaments, but I'll try as much as I can to share more of my journey to WGM with you guys. So thank you so much for watching. Thanks for the support, and I'll see you in the next one.